friends, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing a book that I had put on my 5-star predictions list. I'll leave that video down below for you guys, as well as the playlist to any like 5-star prediction follow-ups you guys might want to see, because I have done, I think, one of these. But today I'm going to be reviewing Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I have a lot of thoughts, but hit like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoy these kinds of videos. But I do post reviews pretty regularly, and I do have a full series talking about all my 5-star prediction follow-ups. I've switched to a review format this year, so keep an eye out for any future ones. If you see one on that list for this year that you're like that you're interested in, it'll probably get a review. But let's just get in the video. So I have like a handful of things to say about Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is Ali Hazelwood's first like step into paranormal romance. It's adult paranormal romance, so it is spicy, keep that in mind. But this is about Misery Lark, who is a vampire. Now she doesn't fit in with the vampires. She became this thing called a collateral, which is kind of like a truce sacrifice situation between the humans, werewolves, and vampires, because in this world it's set in the modern times, and the humans and vampires and werewolves live tolerably. They have their own borders, they don't really cross it, and in order to keep the peace, they kind of like trade off and send off a child at like the age of like 8 or something to live with one of the few factions. And she was the one for the vampires to live with the humans. She doesn't fit in with the humans. Obviously she's a vampire. She got the pointed ears, the fangs, the eyes, and she doesn't fit in with the vampires because by the time that she moves back, she's basically almost an adult. And she doesn't quite fit in with the vampires because the way she speaks is different, the way she acts is different. So fast forward a few years, and basically she's forced to marry the werewolf, like Alpha Low Moreland. She's forced to do this because of another kind of collateral situation. She has, I think, a year to live with him, and then after that she can live wherever she wants. But she has her own reasons for wanting to marry him, and it's not for the romantic ones or for the political ones. She has her own very like selfish and her own like reasoning why she wants to do this. Trigger warnings for this book: there is death, kidnapping, lots of talk about blood because it's a book about vampires. There is some violence and sexual content, and there is murder. So keep that in mind. It's not like, if you read the book, it's not like super in-depth about the blood. It's not super in-depth about the violence. It's a romance book at its core, but just keep that in mind if that's not what you're anticipating going into the book, because it is in here, but it's not like super in detail, in depth, like stuff that you might be anticipating. So moving on to my first thoughts, I was very intrigued by this book. I'm not gonna lie. I enjoyed Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I thought it was a very fun little like contemporary romance. I haven't read any of her other romances just because I've heard so many mixed reviews by so many people who enjoyed Love Hypothesis that I was like, I'm just not going to ruin Ali Hazelwood in my mind. I'm just going to keep Love Hypothesis at the top tier, and Ali Hazelwood is an amazing writer. We'll just keep it there. But this is a paranormal romance, and we all know that I love my paranormal romances, so I couldn't say no to not reading this book, especially since it's about vampires and werewolves, and I love paranormal romances with vampires and werewolves, both separately and together. So I was just like, you know what, we'll give it a shot. We'll give it a shot. Moving on to the topics, the first one is being the characters. I did really enjoy the characters of this book. I thought that they were fun. I enjoyed, I think there was a right amount of angst between Low and Misery, between like Misery, like the kind, not even Misery, between like the will they, won't they, the moments where you're very, very, very aware that Misery is Low's mate, but Misery is not aware. I found that dynamic to be fun, kind of like a grumpy, like soft teddy bear where Misery is just grumpy. I love kind of the longing that happens within like the beginning chapters where we see like kind of Low's inner thoughts. I feel like I'm saying Lowe's the store, but his name is Low, and it's spelled like Lowe's the store, just without the S. And I'm just like, yeah, Lowe's. No. I don't know why we chose this name. Out of all the names we could have chosen, why Low? I definitely do think this works really well as a standalone for like the slow burn aspect of it. I don't think they had really like much romantic interactions until maybe like the last quarter of the book, if that. There are hints of romantic interactions probably about halfway through, but nothing that really comes to fruition until toward the end of the book. And I think it works out as a standalone. I prefer, like, if you're gonna give me a slow burn, I want it in a series. I want them to have not even touched in the first book. I want like grazing hands kind of scenario. And then maybe we can go to protective hugs and forehead kisses in the second, and then finally an actual kiss in the third. But I think this worked as a slow burn standalone. It didn't feel too rushed. It didn't feel like everything was happening literally at the end. I just liked the longing and the angst and the will they, won't they. There were definitely moments where I felt like Ali Hazelwood was definitely a little heavy-handed with how she wrote Lo and Misery. There were definitely moments with Lo where he would like be around children, and like I love those scenes, don't get me wrong. They make my heart melt. They make me go, oh my god, he's such a soft character. Even though it's definitely totally a ploy to like overdo the fact that he's not dangerous. He's very soft. But we get to see him interact with children quite a bit. And it's definitely a ploy to get you to be like, oh yeah, he's not evil. And he won't crush your skull with his teeth. And after a while, I was just like, well, this feels really kind of heavy-handed. I do wish there was like other ways to show how soft of a character he was without necessarily involving young people, children, every single time. And same thing with Misery. We learned that Misery is a hacker about a quarter of the way through. I want to say quarter to like maybe a third of the way through the book. And she's supposed to be like super smart because she can hack, because hacking takes a lot of, you know, mental skill that I do not have up here. But there were definitely moments where she was just painfully oblivious to the obvious hints that she was Lo's mate. She was like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Like, his mate is completely someone else differently. His mate doesn't love him. And the audience kind of knows the truth. And I couldn't tell if there were scenes that I had, like, gleaned over where it showed that Misery was just completely freaking oblivious. Maybe it's because she's been around humans too long and she doesn't pay attention to these cues anymore. I don't know, but it definitely was obvious that it was she was trying to make her seem smart, but in that it made her seem kind of stupid for not realizing, hey, Lo doesn't really hate me? Question mark? I wish there were just moments where we got to see more of Misery's obliviousness, which would probably have cushioned the fact that she is really smart. But then I'm also okay, like genuinely, I would have been okay with a stupid character. Like, give rise to some stupid characters who just don't know what the heck's going on, please. As someone who rarely knows what's going on anymore in this day and age because of how the world is, mixed with her mental health, I don't know what's happening. It'd be nice to have some representation, but definitely a little heavy-handed trying to be like, oh yeah, she's really smart because she can hack. And he's really kind because he likes children. After a while, I was like, okay, are we done? Are we done? And to boot, Misery's like hacking skills, there was no indication that she liked to hack before there was a need for it. So it definitely felt like it was a fill-in to tie into Ali Hazelwood's like STEM roots, and then also give it a rise, like to fit in the plot. I will say that Misery's relationship with her twin, she has a twin brother named Owen. But then so Misery's mom died giving birth to Owen and Misery. Misery's like the last one to pop out. And then she died, and that's why they named her Misery, because, you know, it's miserable to have to kill your own mother. But then Owen also would have contributed to that. So I don't know why he's named Owen, and then the other vampires like named like Vanya and stuff. So why does he get a normal name? But then there's Misery and Vanya, and why didn't we name him Malice or something? I don't know. His nickname could have been Mal. But yeah, their relationship was confusing, because at the beginning, you kind of see the like, you can tell that they're not close. They don't seem to outwardly hate each other, but they're not like bosom buddies kind of like family. You know, they don't tell each other every secret. He doesn't know when her cycle's about to begin, and if vampires get a cycle, I don't know. He doesn't know when she's craving blood. She doesn't know who he's hooking up with. It's a very distant relationship, so I didn't expect to see them try to be close as the years went on, or as the book went on. But then there was like a plot twist in there that made it seem like Owen cared a lot more for Misery than Misery initially thought, which again leads to her obliviousness, because like, how do you need like Owen to like physically tell you that he cares about you almost like, what, 27, 28 years in? Like, again, she tried really hard to make Misery really smart, but then by doing that and like focusing on the STEM aspect of things, we lost out on her being street smart, and the two didn't translate very well against each other. Moving on to the plot, I thought the plot was fun. It definitely flowed well. Akin to a lot of like paranormal romances, there is a bit of a mystery aspect. I feel like that's always the fun part of paranormal romances, because there's like always mystery and intrigue, which then like gets you deeper into the world building, which like is always really fun for me to do and like pick apart. But that to say, Definitely not a plot that you would write home about. I don't think it's anything groundbreaking in the plots of like paranormal romances. But again, it's not a plot to necessarily write home about. It's about a vampire and a werewolf falling in love and the trials and tribulations and societal expectations that come with it. I feel like it's a very basic plot, but it's like, again, it's basic, so there's a lot of it, which I mean is a very safe plot to do when you're trying to break into a new genre of romance. So I can understand why she went with this kind of direction. But again, it's not anything that I would like write home about or want to scream from the top of the towers about. But yeah, the biggest focus was definitely the mystery, especially regarding her friend Serena, who we hear about in the first chapter, which I will talk about why that was a confusing thing for me to mention. But the mystery, even though it's supposed to be like the big reason why Misery does what she does, it's also not the biggest focus, which I'll talk about more in the pacing when I get into it, because the pacing I feel like could have been done differently, but we'll get into that. But yeah, plot's good, flowed nicely, but not stand out, not breakthrough, not something I would like scream at the top of the world, be like, this is a new favorite, this is like revolutionary in the paranormal romance genre. Moving on to Ali Hazelwood's writing style, she does write in a lot of first person from what I've seen of her books, and she has a very fun, addictive writing style. It's very easy to get lost. It's like simple but not lacking. It's like just the right amount of words, I would say, to give you a picture of the rooms, of the people in the world, and also just kind of have you fill in missing details yourself. I also do think a lot of the characters' personalities definitely do come through because of the writing style. We get to see Misery's loneliness as a big aspect of this, and I think she writes it very well, with Misery's reluctance to actually talk to people, but that weird like longing in the back of her, like in the bottom of her stomach, and like the bottom of her heart, the back of her heart, or wherever you want to, however you want to categorize it, who wants to make that like connection that she wasn't able to because of her being collateral so young, and her longing to keep the singular connection with Serena alive, because that's the only positive connection she has, positive relationship she has. So it's like it comes out very well in the writing style, and the longing is also very much there with her little moments with Lo. Moving on to the pacing, which I had talked about previously in terms of the characters, I think pacing is definitely one of the weaker points in this book. The beginning of the book is very confusing. So we start off with chapter 1, or the prologue, and the prologue starts off kind of set during the wedding. It briefly talks about her relationship with Serena when they're younger, and about how it was like 14 years ago, and just her flashbacking and remembering this as she's preparing for the wedding. Then the wedding happens, and we get to see kind of like the fraught relationship between vampires and humans. We see a vampire child and a werewolf child start to argue, and there's about to be something that happens and breaks out, and then Lo steps in and is like, no, it's fine, and like diffuses the situation. And it's one of the first few moments where you're like, maybe he's not such a bad guy if he cares about kids. And then we jump to chapter 1, which is 6 weeks before, which is basically just explaining how Misery got in the situation, why she's now marrying a werewolf, and her kind of like her reasoning for getting into this, and why she decides to do this despite being so against it when it was first brought up to her. I was very confused. Like, I read the beginning of this, and I didn't know I thought it was gonna be like dual POV. I thought we were gonna see Lo and then Misery, because it doesn't say who's talking in the beginning. It doesn't say who's the vampire or whatever. Whoever. It's not giving me any indication about a werewolf or a vampire, but it's all about Serena and Misery talking about how they'll just marry each other if they don't find anyone. And it was confusing because I thought at first it was about Lo, and we would see Lo's like a bit of backstory in his mourning. And again, it doesn't switch to that until we see I'll be marrying a dangerous were or whatever. And that's where I'm like, so we're in Serena's head. So then I had to go back and read the first couple things in Misery's head, my bad. And then I was like, oh, is like Misery like bi or something, and this girl was like her like childhood crush growing up. And it was just like the pacing of it is just very weird. It was just very weird. I feel like we could have just moved the prologue contents literally in the middle of the book, had to start off with chapter 1, and then have it go to the actual wedding. I didn't see the whole point of it back and forth in the beginning. It was confusing. I wasn't a fan of it. It was weird. And there are definitely moments with a lot of filler in this book. There are a lot of filler scenes to kind of build up the angst and the longing between the two. And while it works, this book is not long enough to fill that in and then also have a substantial plot and substantial build up to the plot and conclusion to the plot. So either one had to go. You either had to get rid of the plot and have it just be vibes, or you have to get rid of the fillers and actually try to fill in the plot a little more, because this book is like pretty big for it's about standard for a romance, I'd say, but it definitely is like on the longer side. And there were definitely moments in the novel that I was like, okay, we've seen her wake up at night a million times and train with Alex to hack in the systems a million times. Do we need another scene? I also was just not a fan of how it ended. I think it ended in the epilogue was in Lo's perspective, and it basically just gave us a huge Easter egg. It's not even an Easter egg, it's a full-on like shove in your face. There will be a spin-off as long as Allie Hazelwood can sign a spin-off. Which to me, I find it more satisfying. Well, actually, it was like, this is going to be a spin-off as long as Allie Hazelwood can get a spin-off signed for it. However, the characters that the spin-off is going to be based off of, assuming we didn't get enough page time for, so to me, I feel like it was just like a shot in the dark, and I wasn't really excited when I read about it. I was like, okay, but there were other characters I would have preferred a spin-off for. I would have wanted one of Owen or something, because he had a very interesting plotline toward the end that I wanted to see more of. But instead we have these two, and I'm just like not invested. And I like it when the spin-offs give me something more to be desired for, and give me something to just kind of like play guessing games, like who is it gonna be? Is it gonna be this one? Is it gonna be that one? Is it gonna be these two? But it was just very obvious, and I feel like it was just like very much like a push, like there will be more books in case you enjoyed it, but I don't want to continue on. Last thing before I get into my overall thoughts is the world building. The world building, like I said in this synopsis, is based in modern times. They mention Las Vegas or some city in California or some city in Vegas. Or Vegas City, Vegas City. But it's where the werewolves and humans and vampires like coexist. Werewolves and vampires are not hiding, but they're not living in harmony. They're kind of like, here is the border between the human world and the vampire world, and here's the border between the werewolf world and the human world. They just kind of tolerate each other, and they definitely do have different cultures. It definitely was not something to write home about. Again, I think a lot of these things in this book are very much safe, not in a bad way. Like, obviously it's your first foray into like paranormal romance, and it's different than an actual like straight on romance where it's set in modern day. There are no vampires or werewolves, there's no magic system to think about. So I get why it's the safer bet, but again, it's not something worth writing home about. The one thing in terms of the world building that got me, that really just like knocked this down the full star instead of the half star I wanted to give it, the word nodding. Now, I'm aware this is a huge thing in werewolf fic. It's a huge thing in a lot of fanfic spaces. It's not unheard of. It's not. And it's normal. It happens in the natural world. It's called the bulbous gland. I had to Google that. But what got me was that it was brought up. Like, they have quite a handful of sexual encounters in the last, like, quarter of the book. Again, it's a slow burn, so everything that you want happens, like, in this little chunk here. But my issue with it is that, one, I don't think that, like, nodding would be considered, like, a werewolf secret by any means, because they are, like, wolves, and if anyone who knows anything about wolves is that literal nodding does exist, right? Editing, Therese, please change if I'm wrong. So when Misery's confused, I'm confused because it wasn't really explained in the beginning. Lo was just like, yeah, we're not compatible, and she's like, I don't get it. So she, like, when things are happening and, you know, they're grabbing at each other and she's grabbing at his junk, she feels it at the base. The base. I don't even want to. I'm just gonna get flagged for this, but it's at the base of his hardware, and that she just says, like, she feels it inflate. And at that point in my life, I just kind of sat there and stared at God and was like, please take me out now. And I was like, it's fine. Again, it's like normal to werewolf fic. It's fine. It happens in werewolf fic. It's a big thing. Do you werewolf fic writers? But then, again, handful of sexual experiences. But then, they have to keep bringing it up every time they have sex. Like, there's, I think, a literal point where he goes, I'm about to knot, or I'm knotting misery. And I just kind of sat there and was like, I just want to zip my legs up all the way up to, like, my belly button and just never think about this action ever again. Ever again. I was like, just zip it up. Just like a sleeping bag. Just zoop. And it just kept happening. She would like mention the knot and how they were just kind of like, he was like kind of hovering over her, and then when they had sex it was like the knot was there again, and like then it was like they were in the bathtub, and I'm just like again, it's a big thing, and I thought it could have been in other ways. It didn't need to be repeated like 6 times in the span of like one sex scene. It took me out every time because I'd be like, okay, yeah, we're vibing, and then he goes, I'm nodding misery, and I'm just like, get it out. There's time. He's giving you a warning. Get it out. And then Allie, like Hazel, took it one step further. Like we know, you know, bulbous glands, they're there to prevent the female from running away, to really ensure that she gets impregnated, or there's enough time for things to be pushed out of one orifice into another orifice. I understand that. But then she takes it one step further. Like, I would have been fine. Like, obviously this stuff has to sit. The baster has to sit in it for a while. And then she took it one step further and was like, how long does this last? Then he goes, about 30 minutes. And I'm sitting here, you know, just thinking, great, so that means for 30 minutes you guys are in whatever position you're in for 30 minutes, and you just feel him deflate while you stop, while everything up down there just dries, and then he has to remove himself from And at that point I was like, this is one less star. This is one less star. The 30 minutes like sent me into like another like dragon eggs are made of metal spiral where I just kind of sat there for a minute. I didn't have the full on attack that time where I was like, why? I just kind of laid there with the book on my chest staring at the ceiling like, so this would be my view only. And I was just like, zip, zip. I just want to zip up my leg. Chastity belt, right on. Maybe that part should have been the writing style, but I feel like it fit in the world building more. I don't know. Oh, and then she described, this is why I'm just like, I can't, like, it says here, the bulge of his knot grows larger and larger. I feel strange, full, nice. I might even feel, I'm going to do it, misery. I'm going to come where I'm supposed to. His voice is barely comprehensible. I'm going to pop a knot in your tight little, and I just, yeah. I don't even want to hold the book right now after reading that again. I read that last night, and I just like laid there for a minute and was like, it just doesn't sound pleasurable. Like, again, I get it. It's to keep the mate, but then like how he words, I'm going to pop. It doesn't sound. Moving on to my overall thoughts. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars, although with this, like I had to sit on this review for like a week, which is why this didn't go up right away, because I was like, I really don't know what to say. Because I thought I had enjoyed it, but then I did more of the review. I listened, I watched my friend Rachel's review, I read other reviews, and I just realized that I was just like, you know what, maybe not. So right now it's sitting at a very hesitant 4, almost 3 out of 5 stars. I think it's a good book. It's fun. It's like, you know, it's very quick and easy to get through. It's nothing that's gonna break the brain bank too much trying to comprehend it. And like I said, it is a first toe dip into paranormal romance, so she definitely did go with the safer routes. There wasn't much imagination spewing from that little brain of hers, which isn't a bad thing. I think if you're like trying to get into paranormal romance, this would be a fun little dip into it, as long as you are of the appropriate age. I don't want to hear about no 14 or 13-year-olds learning about knotting. The internet taught that for us. I shall not repeat this cycle. If you are of the appropriate age and want to dip your toes into paranormal romance, I think this book would be a really nice dip into it. But if you are like a weathered paranormal romance reader, you probably might not like it. Probably won't bring anything exciting. Or if you're a romance reader, like a weathered romance reader, and you just want something to turn your brain off of paranormal romance for a while, you might enjoy this. But if you're just like, if you're looking for something to like change your view of paranormal romance or like really give you a new outlook on it, not the book for it. But I would still recommend it, again, if you're of the right age. And if Lo's eyes are staring at me predatorily. And if you're like new to the paranormal romance genre, I think you'll have fun. But that is it for my review of Ali Hazelwood's Bride. If you have read this book, let me know in the comments down below your thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. And if you like this video and we do more reviews, let me know in the comments down below as well. Recommend books to me to read. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys in my next video. Stay safe. Bye.